Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. The theme of this segment today is don't be bullied. Especially don't be bullied by deranged lunatics. I'll explain all that coming up. But before we do that, I want to share what I think are the worst of the Fauci emails. And I'll tell you, a lot of people are getting riled up about the Fauci emails. And we're going to have a guest coming up later who's going to give us more detail about it. And maybe there's things I'm missing. I think it's a game of expectations. Like, I expected there to be like these Fauci, like when I saw the headlines, I thought there were going to be Fauci emails that were like, oh, I hope they don't realize that the virus that we made got, you know what I mean? Like, I thought there'd be like crazy smoking guns, and there weren't really. But here's the two that I think were most noteworthy. The first one's on masks. This is February 5th, 2020. Sylvia, I think he's talking to the head of, it's like American University, I think. Anyway, masks are really masks are really for infected people to prevent them from spreading infection to people who are not infected, rather than protecting uninfected people from acquiring infection. The typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out virus, which is small enough to pass through the material. It might, however, provide some slight benefit in keeping out gross droplets if someone coughs or sneezes on you. I do not recommend that you wear a mask, particularly since you're going in a very low-risk situation. Your instincts are correct. Money is best spent on medical countermeasures such as diagnostics and vaccines. Okay? Now, people have defended this and saying, oh, well, this was February 5th, 2020, very early in the whole thing. We didn't know much, right? So maybe he was wrong about some things back early on. And that's true, and I've given a lot of grace, and I will give a lot of grace to some unknowns early in the whole thing. But the rebuttal to that response is, nothing's changed. From February 5th till when everyone is freaking out about masks, nothing changed. Like, it's not like there was a scientific discovery that COVID, we learned, is impenetrable, like does not penetrate masks. Or it's not like we had some scientific breakthrough where we invented a new mask where COVID can't go through it. So nothing changed from February 2020 to today. So Fauci knew all along that masks don't do anything. The only thing that changed was politics and virtue signaling. That's it. A mask is a virtue signaling symbol that says, I hate Trump. I hate Trump. I believe in science. I'm taking this seriously. I care about people. I'm a progressive. It's a uniform. It's a uniform. It's a religious head covering. A mask is a religious head covering. We talked about this weeks ago. There's been many different types of religious head coverings for Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and the woke, which is a cult. This is their head covering. It just so happens to be around their faces. So that's all that changed with masks. And there's Fauci admitting the same. He's like, oh yeah, masks, they don't do anything. Same thing with asymptomatic spread. Here's the second email that I think is noteworthy. He said, most transmissions occur from someone who is symptomatic. He said this before early on. He said about masks out loud as well early on, and same thing here about symptomatic spread. The asymptomatic spread thing is important because when this came out that you can spread it without having symptoms, that is what was used to justify everyone wearing masks all the time. Because you can spread it and don't even know you have it, which isn't a thing. And he said out loud early on that asymptomatic spread, sure, it happens, but it's not the main driver of spread. But still was used as the justification for everyone to wear a mask nonstop, always, all the time. And still today, I don't know where you are. Hopefully you live in a territory formerly known as the United States. In California, OSHA, you met yesterday, the Office of Safety and Health Agency, whatever. They met and they said that employees in California have to wear masks until at least July 31st. So we're still wearing masks until July 31st. We'll talk more with Scott Hounslow coming up at the last segment of the show, all about that. All right, let's get to the main topic here. Don't be bullied. Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, who surely is running for president. He has my support so far. I can't think of anyone better, it's for sure. He signed a bill the other day which bans boys from competing in girls' sports, transgender children. Now, the NC2A, the Bullies, they said if any state passes a bill like this, then we're not going to hold any NC2A events in your state, which is a big deal in Florida, right? Imagine there's a lot of NC2A events happening in Florida. So when DeSantis heard that threat from the NC2A, he called the Speaker of the House in Florida and said, hey, did you hear what the NC2A said? And the Speaker's like, yeah, I did. And DeSantis said, well, we definitely got to get this done then. He said, he told this to Tucker Carlson. He said, you can't be cowed by these organizations or woke corporations from doing the right thing. And so my viewpoint the whole time is we got to protect our girls. And so if the price of having a tournament is that I have to deny equal opportunities to hundreds of thousands of young girls and women throughout Florida, I'm much more willing to stand with the girls and to hell with the events. Tucker asked DeSantis if he expects his state to be punished for this bill.
Do you expect to be punished, and do you expect your state to be punished for this?
No, actually, I don't think so, Tucker, because I think what I think we've shown, not just with this, but we did a strong election integrity bill in Florida, actually stronger than Georgia, and we just made it clear we're standing with our folks. We're going to do the right thing. And so if corporations want to come in and try to bully us around, they are going to go nowhere. It's going to be like hitting their head against a brick wall. The result has been we've had very little to do with that elections bill. And I don't think we're going to have very much to do at this point here because we leaned into it and we stood strong.
So just be confident. Be confident, be strong. Stop being bullied. There's so many people who have backed down. So it's like a bell curve, right? It's a bell curve. So over here you have the crazies who are like these crazy progressives who happen to be in a lot of power. So they have a ton of influence, but there's not many of them. Then you have a large percentage of people who are on that side, but they don't, I mean, they may support it, but they really just support it because they're tricked. It's like the nice thing to do, right? And then you have this giant portion over here of people who don't support it, but they're scared to speak out against it. And then you have a much smaller number down here of people who are very much against it and willing to speak out about it. My goal is to move you from this big category of like, I hate this stuff, but I'm too scared, I'm too cautious, I don't want to come over here and be like, no, I have to speak out against this. There's so many people backing down. Because honestly, if you're in this group who's against it, but not speaking out against it, you might as well be over here with this group who's for it. And really, you're being manipulated and controlled by these small group of lunatics over here. So the only place you can be is over here against it and speaking out against it. So many people are backing down. It's refreshing to see people over here who don't back down. This is out of Virginia. School district passed this rule that all the district teachers have to refer to kids by their new preferred pronouns and all this other stuff. And this gym teacher said, no, I'm not going to do it. And the school suspended him. So he got up at a school board meeting, and this is how you stand up to bullies.
My name is Tanner Cross, and I am speaking out of love for those who suffer with gender dysphoria. 60 Minutes this past Sunday interviewed over 30 young people who transitioned, but they felt led astray because lack of pushback or how easy it was to make physical changes to their bodies in just 3 months. They are now detransitioning. It's not my intention to hurt anyone, but there are certain truths that we must face when ready. We condemn school policies like 80-40 and 80-35 because it will damage children, defile the holy image of God. I love all of my students, but I will never lie to them regardless of the consequences. I'm a teacher, but I serve God first, and I will not affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa because it's against my religion, it's lying to a child, it's abuse to a child, and it's sinning against our God.
There you go. That's it. It's against my religion, it's lying to a child, it's abusing a child, and it's sinning against our God. There you go. It's nailed it. Right. Now, he got suspended, right? And it's not just because he's against the school policy. He got suspended because he's a heretic. He's a heretic acting out against their religion. Wokeism is a religious doctrine. It's the religious doctrine of the progressive left. And if you speak out against it, you'll be treated as a witch. So this is what happens when someone has the courage to stand up. People join you. So he's fighting back, lawsuits, I'm sure. But local churches have been collecting signatures to recall the board, the school board, which is great. It's awesome, right? That would never have happened if one man didn't stand up. Here's the local pastor. I believe it's his pastor. He said, this school board, some of them are not doing their duty to protect our children, let alone educate our children. They're exposing our kids to sexually explicit materials. They're introducing racially divisive curriculum. They're emotionally abusing our children by perpetuating lies about gender confusion when they affirm pronouns that are contrary to biology, reality, and the beautiful way that God has designed them. The local Democratic Party said that comment there was an incitement of violence. So what are you going to do? Are you going to be bullied? And are you going to be bullied by people who are insane, right? Because the people who are in charge are the most extreme and the most out of their minds. And I'll give you just one example of many. Central Connecticut State University. They are building a parking structure. And there's a crane building the parking structure. And at the end of the crane, you got the crane and then you got a cable. And at the end of the cable is a loop. And someone walked by and thought it was a noose. And it's just amazing. We have a story like this every day. Like, it's always like people, like, has anyone ever seen an actual noose? When was the last time a noose was used to intimidate a black person? It doesn't happen. But crazy people, mentally ill people, deeply indoctrinated and brainwashed people walk around and they see nooses everywhere. Just nonstop. There's nooses all the time. They see anytime they see the letter O, they're like, oh, it's a noose. So here's the head of Connecticut State. Quite frankly, I think it's reckless and tone-deaf behavior. Speaking of the construction company, with the crane and the loop at the end of the perception of its noose-like appearance is concerning. We're speaking to people last night who certainly felt some pain. We feel that pain. And we've issued a statement expressing our concern, and we are working diligently to get it down. And I love the local news report. The local news report's so funny because they're like, oh, here's Lisa with more details on the discovery, Lisa. And poor Lisa is like, oh, yes, university officials telling me they've been monitoring the situation overnight after making this discovery yesterday. Yes, monitoring the situation of a crazy lunatic who looks at a crane. And I think they zoom in here. They zoom in there. Look, is that a noose? Nope, just a loop at the end of a crane. That's it. But the local news, police are also investigating 8 noose-like ropes found at a different construction site across town. 8 noose-like ropes. Okay, so that's what we're doing now. We're looking at, there's a noose-like rope. Come on, you're gonna be intimidated by these people? Bad enough to be bullied. It's even worse to be bullied by lunatics. And it stops now. Stop being bullied now. And get prepared for what's to come. I'm very concerned about inflation. I mean, is this an irrational fear when Biden just spent $12 trillion? It's half of our GDP. Never been done before. It's gonna hit. And when it hits, your money's gonna be worth nothing. And it's gonna be awful. It's gonna be awful for each person. And then who has money and cash. And then it's gonna be awful for just the panic that ensues afterwards. And it's funny how we think we're so immune to this, like, oh, that would never happen in America. Of course it will. And people are going to panic. And then on top of that, you got this ransomware attacks against oil pipelines, which affected the Southeast, as you know. And right now we're in the midst of the largest meat packing plants in the country are under a ransomware attack. There's a hospital here in San Diego that has a ransomware attack. All the medical records are frozen. They've been frozen for a long time. Biden was just asked yesterday if he thinks Putin's testing him. So that's what warfare looks like right now. You got inflation, which is self-imposed, and then you have all these ransomware attacks. And I'm worried about actual supply lines and actual inflation, but I'm also concerned about people freaking out. And I want nothing to do with freaking out people. So go to My Patriot Supply and get some food. Right? The food's good for 25 years. So you buy it now, you're good to go. Right? They have everything there, though. They have survival gear, emergency blankets, water filtration. What happens when there's a ransomware attack on our water supply or our electrical supply? They have fire starters, flashlights, everything you need. Everything you need. For natural disasters, all the way to, who knows, Russian computer hackers. Prepare with thefirst.com. At the very least, get $50 off the 4-week emergency food supply. Just knock that out. Prepare with thefirst.com. Coming up next, I want to talk about the left's manipulation of language and why they do it. Coming up, true story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. I gotta share this brilliant insight from Michael Malice. We're talking about the left's use of language here, language and hypocrisy. He said, calling cathedral operatives, the word cathedral for him, it's like university, the swamp, the deep state, the media. He calls it the cathedral. Calling cathedral operatives on their hypocrisy is akin to thinking it a contradiction when a carpenter puts down a saw and picks up a hammer and starts hammering. Language is merely a tool for them to further their goals and is not taken nor should be taken literally or seriously by them. Are you with me? So when the left, when a carpenter picks up a saw and saws, and then they put down their saw and picks up a hammer, you look at it, no one would say, "Ah, hypocrite!" They're just using different tools in their tool belt in order to accomplish the end goal of building the whatever it is. It's the same with progressives and language. You can't call out the left on their use of language because language to them, or I should say you can call it out, but it won't detract them because language means nothing to them. Just like you could, I guess you could be like, "Oh, you're a carpenter and here you are using a hammer," and be like, "Yeah, it's a tool. I need to use all the tools in order to build the table." Right? And someone on the left would be like, "Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about language. It's just a tool that I'm using in the immediate moment to justify whatever end goal I want to accomplish." Which, that comment led to one of my favorite responses ever. If we point out the left's hypocrisy for the 58,251st time, now we will surely win. It doesn't detract them at all. It doesn't sting them at all. Language to them is just a tool. Reality doesn't matter. I got a bigger example I want to give, but just real quick, just because we talked about it yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security, right? So we played the clip yesterday of Joe Biden saying that white supremacy is the biggest threat to the homeland or whatever, right? The biggest lethal threat. And I went and I found the Department of Homeland Security report, and it doesn't give any data. It doesn't give any data, any information, any context, any stories, any examples. It's not there. And then it doesn't define anything. What is a lethal terrorist threat? What is that? Are gangs considered a terror threat? Like, how do you define that? What is white supremacy exactly? Because we got to define that, because to the left today, everything is white supremacy. Math is white supremacy, right? Showing up on time is white supremacy. According to the Smithsonian, they have a list of white supremacy culture. And what is showing up on time? Believing in a nuclear family is white supremacy. So, genuine question, how does the Department of Homeland Security define white supremacy? It doesn't matter to them, though. They don't care. It's just whatever. It's whatever they need to define it as in order to make the point they want to make, in order to get to the end result they want to get to. You with me? It doesn't matter how they got to that conclusion and how they answer those questions. They'll just manipulate language around however they want. Here's the real example I want to give in this segment. Gender affirmation. Right? It used to be called sex change. Right? You go get a sex change operation. But the activists changed the word because sex change implies you're changing something. No. You're merely affirming the true gender that you are. So it's called gender affirming care. Oh, you're against gender affirming care? A couple of years ago, Harvard and Yale medical schools embraced this transgender ideology. So it's just a matter of time before it trickled down everywhere. And it's trickled down to where I live. Our local children's hospital has a new gender affirming care center where they mutilate children and pump them full of hormones. So this is just the latest, right, example of how, well, let me say this. Let me explain. Okay, let's do it. This is the clearest example of our articulation of the difference that progressives and conservatives have on transgenderism. Okay? Here's the issue. Progressives think that gender is a social construct and that gender is in your mind. So if your mind says you're a woman, but you have the body of a man, then your body is wrong. And your body needs to be fixed, and your body needs to be changed in order to match your mind. That's where you get the expression like, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, right? Your gender is in your mind, and your body may or may not match what's in your mind. That's the progressive belief. The conservative belief is that your body determines your gender. your chromosomes specifically. XX is female, XY is male. If you feel in your mind that you're different than what your body says, then the conservative says, well, your mind needs to be changed, right? Your mind needs to be fixed to align with the reality that is your body. Do those make sense? They're exact opposite perspectives. Progressives think gender's in your mind. Conservatives think gender is your body. And when they don't align, well, which are we going to change? So progressives think if they don't align, well, you got to change your body. Got to cut some things off and add some things, and boom, then your problem solved. Conservatives think, no, you got to fix your mind, get your mind right. And that's always been the view. It's gender dysmorphia is a mental illness, right? So the progressive view is that these kids are born in the wrong body, so they have to change their body, as opposed to getting to the root of what's going on in their minds. Cool. So we have a new a Center for Gender Affirming Care, and I'm sure you do too. And it's all based on this belief that what a kid's mind says they are, that's their true gender. And they don't give any concern to what happened to this person. Like, what traumas did they experience? What confusion are they experiencing that makes them think they're the wrong gender? No, it's just, we got to take the kid's word for it. They got a bunch of videos on their website. Here's part of a 6-minute one. This is Asia Bell, who is a boy now living as a girl.
I remember I was in the elevator and I was like, Mom, we're actually here. We're actually going to be able to do what I want to do to make me happy.
Stop there. Do what I want to do to make me happy. Isn't that everything right there? We can finally do what I want to do to make me happy. I don't know what age this boy started this all, but pretty young. Let that sentence soak in. Now I can finally do what I want to do to make me happy. No mind ever paid attention to, or no mind ever paid to, why are you not happy? Why are you not happy? Why do you want to do this? What are you running from? Why do you think mutilating your genitalia will make you happy? These are children in a children's hospital. Is there any other part of that hospital where they do what the kid wants to do? No, the doctors and adults do what's right. But for some reason, in the Center for Gender Affirming Care, the adults follow the commands of the 8-year-olds. Weird, right? I'll give you another example from this video. This picture stood out. This is a girl. It's that person. It's a girl now living as a boy. And a bunch of the videos have the girl has her breasts removed and the scars and all this stuff. And again, why would you want to do that? Now, this picture is part of the montage. Now, I'm making this up. I don't know the story, right? They don't share this story, obviously, because they don't want anyone to analyze the root of the scenario here. That picture, to me, they look like brothers. Don't they look like brothers? And they all look really similar. I think they look like brothers. And one of the kids you can see has some special needs. The person in question here is on the bottom left in the maroon shirt. The one daughter. Maybe the one girl in the family felt like she wasn't getting enough attention. Maybe she felt that if she were a boy, like her brothers, then she would fit in more. Who knows? But that's my point. That's the kind of thing that we would need to uncover, as opposed to just removing perfectly functioning organs and patting ourselves in the back for being so woke and inclusive. I'll never forget, it was years ago when I first started learning about this transgender stuff, and I heard the story of it was a girl, little girl, like 3 years old, wanted to be a boy, and went to therapy, and the therapist discovered that the girl, who was older, had a younger brother who had special needs, and the parents were giving a ton of attention to the boy because the boy had special needs. And the girl, in her 3-year-old brain, very rationally and understandably, thought that her parents loved boys more. And if she became a boy, then she would get more love from her parents. And you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So they dealt with that as a family and figured it out, and now the girl's a happy girl. But if that happened a year or two later, or like around now, they'd go to the Center for Gender Affirming Care and lop off some body parts and give her testosterone. That's so messed up. 60 Minutes, to their credit, did a report the other day of people with regret, who have regret for their transitioning. And these people, they just can't believe that doctors and therapists just let them push them into these massive life-altering procedures without getting to the root of it mentally and emotionally. Here's one clip from 60 Minutes.
Did this have any part of it? A sense that men had it easier in life than women did, and that your road might be easier if you were male?
Yes. I just had this sense that if I could inhabit life as like a trans man, as a man, then I wouldn't feel so self-conscious. I was thinking that it would make me feel very free.
Interesting. If life was so difficult as a woman, well, maybe if I just switched to being a man, then life will be easier. Interesting. But again, we can't get to the root of that stuff anymore because it's not about your mind being wrong. Your mind's right, progressives say. Your mind is right. It's your body that's wrong. We're doing this to kids. Let me end here. My anger, of course, anger is a strong word. My frustration is not at people with gender dysphoria. Goodness, no. I have sympathy and love for people who are going through this incredibly difficult experience that I wouldn't wish on anyone. My frustration goes to the so-called doctors who are doing harm, permanent, traumatic harm to kids. And then to all of us, why are we letting these people push this on our kids in school and in pop culture? It's so bizarre that we live in a time when Ron DeSantis makes headlines, the governor of Florida, because he said in Florida, boys will compete in boy sports and girls will compete in girl sports. Right? Like 5 years ago? Could you imagine if a governor stood up and said, in my state, boys will compete with boys? Everyone would be like, yeah, obviously. And now someone says that, it's like, oh, give it a cover. Everyone's freaking out. But as I said in the last segment, most people agree with you. It's a tiny majority of activists who are leading this. Don't fall for them. Don't fall for it. Don't be bullied. Speak out for truth. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, this is a Cornell professor giving some advice to fellow educators on how to properly brainwash children. Enjoy.
Film, if I want to teach them about whiteness, it's obvious if I say, oh, we're going to screen a clip of Birth of a Nation. Oh, this is so racist, but I'm not attached to this, even though, the building blocks of cinema we're scraped together with this. I'll show them Miracle. I'll show them the hockey movie Miracle so they can see how whiteness is tied to nationalism. And then I'll pair it with Dyer's White, and then I will mostly fade to the black. And I mean, I will just sit back and let the students, and this is the privilege of the kinds of students who are in the class, but do the work of auto-correcting each other and then being like, I see it here and I see it everywhere.
Wow, amazing. So it's part of the left. You just have to tear down everything that's good. Everything that's good about America, right? So Miracle, 1980 Olympic hockey team beating the Soviets. Like, that was a great American, patriotic, wonderful moment. And that must be destroyed as whiteness as well. Larry Sand is here. He's the president of the California Teachers Empowerment Network and a former teacher himself. Mr. Sand, how are you, sir?
How you doing, Mike? I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm grateful you're here, and I want to take a time here to talk about what good teachers can do, or teachers who are concerned about this, what they can do. But before we get to that, I think more people are learning about all this woke critical race stuff. What are like maybe the top 3 examples that first come to mind for you that are the most concerning, the most like, wait, like what's happening here?
Well, I mean, we can talk about the corporate move, which is just stunning. But to me, I mean, if you're asking for the 3 worst areas, it's schools, schools, and schools, because we are brainwashing our kids with this garbage. And parents need to fight back much more so than they're doing now. We can get into that maybe a little bit later, but it's very dangerous.
What's something in the schools that you find most concerning? And we know the big picture stuff. What's something more, maybe a little more subtle that's being snuck in there?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's subtle, but you're basically teaching white children frequently that they're the fault of all society. And we're doing this with 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds, my God. I mean, this is psychological abuse. I mean, forget the political angle for a second. This is psychological abuse. And there should be some lawsuits fighting it on that level, on that basis.
Let's say we don't fight back and this continues, and we go down this road for a generation, 20 years or whatever. What does this generation look like? Who's 5 years old now? Bolshevik Russia in the 1920s. I mean, this stuff has to be fought. I mean, this is what's known as cultural Marxism. It's a slow, long, steady march through the institutions, and it's working. And until we start fighting back, unless we start fighting back, we're going to lose the generation, which means we're going to lose the country. These children are the next generation who will be running the country, and we're feeding them garbage. Who will look at everything from Thomas Jefferson and George Washington all the way down to the 1980 Olympic hockey team as evil, white, racist, terrible, awful people.
Right. I mean, in San Francisco, they even canceled Dianne Feinstein, this, left-wing icon. I mean, they'll stop at nothing.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you suggest parents do? What do parents do?
Okay. First of all, parents must be educated. Parents have to wake up. And then what you do is you go to your school and complain, and preferably take people with you. If you're going alone, you'll be called a kook, a crackpot, a racist, whatever. But if you're going with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 parents, they'll have to listen to you. And if the school doesn't change, go to the school board and demand time to voice your views. Go to the media. Tell the media what you're feeling and what you're doing. And as a last resort, pull your kids from that school, homeschool, send them to a private school, do anything but support that school. Yeah. That's what parents must do.
Then parents get together, let's say maybe a dozen parents get together and maybe send an email to the principal and set up a meeting. Is that how you would suggest that starts off? Yeah,
an email, a phone call. I would even start with the teacher, and if the teacher is adamant, okay, well, then you go to the principal. And, however you want to do it, phone call, email, text. I'm very concerned about what you're doing to my kids and what's going on in the school. And I and 20 other parents need to come and talk to you about what's a good time. And then go talk to the principal. And if that works and things change, end of story. If it doesn't, then you go to the school board and then the media. And then, as I say, it's the last resort, then you have to pull your kid out.
Totally. So you're a former teacher, so you get how this could go, right? It's going to go as, oh, you don't understand what we're really teaching. We're just trying to be anti-racist. We're trying to teach people to be inclusive and kind and nice, and this is how we're doing it. And sure, we're adding some stuff to the curriculum, but it's stuff that hasn't been taught in a long time, and kids need to know this. And you're not in the classroom. You don't understand how we're doing it. It's actually pretty insulting that you, a parent, are telling me how to do my job. And don't you worry, we're doing it the right way, right? That's all the stuff that's going to be spread. How do you respond?
Yeah, well, you can suggest that it's your children and your tax dollars, and that you're in charge. And that, I'm sorry, but what you're doing, Miss Smith or Mr. Smith, to be sexist, is wrong. And and if that's what you're going to continue to do, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then use the steps I suggested earlier.
Yeah. Oh, but Mr. Sand, I'm just doing what the state is telling me to do, right? I have to teach this curriculum now.
Well, because they're adding to what the curriculum is going downhill, granted. And in California, we have an ethnic studies bill, which it keeps mutating and it keeps getting a little bit milder. Why? Because parents and taxpayers are complaining. They have public comment periods and things are changing when the parents scream. Can't play nice. I mean, you can start off being nice, you can be respectful, but you need to be very forceful.
Yeah, totally. Okay, what's your advice for teachers who are against this stuff, but just need to keep their paycheck and get their pension, right?
Yeah, teachers, I feel for teachers. Obviously, I was a former teacher, but granted, I retired 12 years ago, but when I was in the classroom, I didn't force feed this crap to kids, pardon my language. Granted, things were a little bit different then, but my school, there are a lot of teachers who venerated Che Guevara. And I told the kids that Che Guevara was a mass murderer. Okay, no, but I didn't get fired, and I didn't, my tires weren't slashed. And teachers need to speak up. And granted, I was at a quote union light school, so a lot of the things I said were, I was just really, I think, sort of looked at as an old kook, but whatever, I could care less. Teachers need to find other teachers. It's better that way. It's the same with parents. If you can find 3 or 4 other teachers at the school, go to the principal. What we're teaching our kids is not good, and here's why.
My last question for you. I saw a clip the other day of a teacher in Portland who said, you're going to get fired if you don't embrace all this stuff. Just like we fire teachers who sexually molest kids, we're going to fire teachers who create trauma, racial trauma in children.
Yeah.
Embrace this. Do you think the unions will support teachers like you who want to speak out against this?
Well, I read that story, and you're right, but I dare say, I hope, I really think that Portland is an outlier. Okay. I don't think most cities and most schools will do that. If you are in Portland, then you might have you may have a choice to make. Do you want to go along with the regnant Bolshevism that we're teaching? Or do you want to say, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to get a job in a private school. I'm going to go find another public school that more suits my values.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to have to start making that choice and making some sacrifices to get their kids what is best, clearly. Get them out of these places. The article is Critical Race Theory or Crazy Radical Tantrums. Larry Sand from the California Teachers Empowerment Network. Mr. Sand, thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you so much, Mike. Pleasure being with you. Take care.
No, thanks for encouraging us. Let's come back, talk with Scott Hansen about the Fauci emails, what you need to know, and now specifically what Fauci has known and about the lab leak. We'll do that next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. The Fauci emails. Here's Fauci's first appearance since his emails were released. Nicole Wallace said, the true mark of someone is if they look good even when their personal emails come out. So you pass the test. Very few of us would pass. Hard-hitting stuff. Here's what Fauci said.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that there are people out there who, for one reason or other, resent me for what I did in the last administration, which was not anything that was anti-Trump at all. It was just trying to get the right information, to try and get the right data. And what they didn't seem to understand, I guess that's understandable that they didn't understand it, is that science is a dynamic process. So something that you know in January, you make a recommendation or a comment about it. But as you get more and more information, the information leads you to change, because that's what science is. It's a self-correcting process.
Yeah, you don't understand. Vanity Fair just published just now this massive piece. It's going to make huge news. It says, in one State Department meeting, officials seeking to demand transparency from the Chinese government say they were explicitly told by colleagues not to explore the Wuhan Institute of Virology's gain-of-function research because it would bring unwelcome attention to the U.S. government funding it. Amazing. Now, someone who's been covering this well before Vanity Fair jumped on the bandwagon is our friend Scott Hansen from Red State. They're all over this and have been way before the lame stream. Scott, how are you, brother?
Alrighty, Mike. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, dude. Let's start with EcoHealth Alliance. This Lancet letter was the very first declaration, very early on, that we repudiate to the firmest degree. This did not come from a lab leak. Tell us about that letter.
So the letter was originally orchestrated by Peter Daszak, who is the president of EcoHealth Alliance. The way that the media kind of portrayed this letter was that there was a random conglomeration of scientists who are saying that there was no way this came from a lab leak. But as a result of FOIA requests and FOIA releases by certain individuals, we were able to get emails which actually detailed out all of the scientists that Peter Daszak actually solicited to sign this letter. Again, it was the letter which we end up having this letter here, which has their entire thing here. Among the part of this letter, it states that we declare no competing interests. But as we go through the list of 27 signatories, 5 of them are employees or on the board of EcoHealth Alliance, and the vast majority of the rest have either been funded by EcoHealth Alliance at some point or have a current partnership with EcoHealth Alliance. So it wasn't like many of these people had a choice of whether or not to sign the letter. DASOC put it before them and said, "You're putting your name on this." And again, immediately, this is January 2020 when this was drafted, and they were already saying no lab leak. It's a conspiracy theory. How would they even have known?
And just to be clear, correct me if I'm wrong, the National Institute of Health gave $3.7 million to EcoHealth Alliance. EcoHealth Alliance gave $600,000 to the Wuhan Institute of Virology to study coronavirus research in bats.
It goes even deeper than that, and I don't think the Vanity Fair article actually hits on this, and that is that yes, 3.7 million was given to them, but that was that current funding. There was other funding that had previously been given to EcoHealth Alliance. Yes, 600K went to the WIV to study bat coronaviruses. But even beyond that, in 2016 and 2017, Peter Daszak himself, the director of EcoHealth Alliance, did gain-of-function research in conjunction with Xinzheng Li at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So they used NIH funding to conduct what is essentially weapons research at a Chinese virology lab in Wuhan.
So these guys weren't just covering their tails when it comes to money. They didn't want to be blamed directly for this.
We're talking about the deaths of 3.5 million people. I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about. We're talking about half the Holocaust in a matter of months. And again, the whole point of this is that they were covering this up before we even, or attempting to cover it up before we even knew anything about the virus.
The former head of the CDC, Robert Redfield, he said he got death threats from fellow scientists saying that it likely escaped from a lab. I expected it from politicians. I didn't expect it from science. We have 2 minutes. What did you learn about Fauci through his email dump? What's the main headline here?
Well, again, tying him back to DASOC, I mean, one of the biggest things I got out of there was that DASOC sent an email to Fauci in April 2020, thanking him for debunking the lab release theory. A good portion of the email, actually, a good paragraph or so, is actually redacted out of the article. The code that they use is that it could be damaging to foreign relations with another country. So here we are talking about China. Yeah. I mean, this is exactly it.
The smoking gun was redacted.
Right. And again, could we imagine that this testimony with Daszak and Fauci is damaging to Argentina or England or Russia? No, there's only one other country that's in this story, and that's China. Even more so, Dr. Xinzheng Li was petitioning U.S. government officials and U.S. scientists to change the name of SARS-CoV-2 to COVID-19 because they were worried about the branding link to SARS-1, which came from China. They didn't want this virus linked back to China, and I have those emails as well. We'll be writing on that today and tomorrow.
Okay, redstate.com. Look for Scott Hounsel on Red State and go read all of his articles on this. He's been diving deep, and he's way ahead of everyone else, way ahead of Vanity Fair. And who wrote about this recently? Another right-wing rag.
Washington Post has written about it. I mean, and BuzzFeed was actually the one that released the giant FOIA of all of Fauci's tweets or Fauci's emails. So it's now starting to be the MSM realizes that they may have been complicit in this cover-up.
They're catching up to Red State and Scott. Appreciate you, Scott. Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Tomorrow, we'll talk about Israel and the Palestinians. That's our special. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word.